Welcome to Forward Focus. My name's Tom Burdick. Today we're talking about growth and growth management, whether it's ruining our neighborhoods. Got a couple of guests today. First guest to my immediate left is Councilman Brian Derdowski, King County Council. And next to Brian is Bill Elder. And Bill is a, well, tell us what group you're with.
Well, I'm here today with the Washington Population Coalition. We're a group of people that are interested in population issues.
What we're doing throughout the state is we are turning forecasts into self-fulfilling prophecies. The people can control this situation. If the people go to their elected officials and they say, I believe that growth is a choice, and I want to slow down the population growth so that it is more reasonable, and while I don't want to shut off growth entirely, I want to have moderate growth so that our children will have a better future. And if they were consistent with that message, then they would change the political institutions sufficiently to make this happen. But currently, the public has been sold a bill of goods. The public believes that growth is just coming, it's inevitable, it's our kids. And that propaganda, and it's truly propaganda, if you look at the statistics, growth is not our kids. The bulk of the growth is coming from in-migration. And then some. But if people decide that they are going to control the futures of their neighborhoods, then we can have our farmlands, our rural areas, our forest land, and we can have those stable Seattle neighborhoods that have stood the test of time for 8 decades. We can have suburban neighborhoods that are consistent and pleasant to live in. We can have it both, but we can't do it if we take unrealistic, developer-driven forecasts and turn those forecasts into self-fulfilling prophecies for a future that is undesirable. We must not be like the lemmings that are plunging for the ocean mindlessly. We are planning our own future misery, and we can turn this around, but we have to do it with a new paradigm shift in looking at population itself.
Well, one of the other side of the coin is that when we do grow, how we go about doing that. How does housing occur? We've heard about the massive 2,500, 3,500 home developments. You know, I'm in the construction business. I've seen those contractors. They show up from out of state. They bring in drywallers, plumbers, everybody from out of state. They take their money and they leave the state with 3,500 new houses. And yet there's an awful lot of small homeowners, 20 and 30 acre developments, mom and pop developments, that never get a shot at putting their smaller developments together. How do we change that?
Well, first of all, we do it through zoning. In King County, we've made some dreadful mistakes, and in other counties as well, where we zone multifamily on too large a sites. If you have a 25-acre piece of ground and you zone it for 20 houses per acre, you're putting in a 400-unit future ghetto. What should be happening is we should be going back to the past, where you had neighborhoods where you had a single-family neighborhood and you had a 6-plex and an 8-plex and a 14-plex, and by and large they were owned and operated by local people, and it fit into the community, and those neighborhoods have stood the test of time. Now, the beauty of this is that you actually diversify the supply side of the market. We are creating monopolies through our zoning codes. We're making it so that increasingly more and more units are being built by fewer and fewer businesses, and that will drive the price up. But if we had more small builders, if there were thousands of small apartment owners.
So that's what you mean by monopoly.
Exactly.
When a very few developers control most of the new housing starts, they also control the price.
You got it.
Whereas if you have more and more smaller developers, they have to compete with each other.
That's right. You see, look at the current property owner. Property owner owns 10 acres, being taxed off of their land, having to sell, but they don't have enough resources to finance on their own a 100-unit mega development. So they are forced to sell at a bargain basement price to a developer, who then uses his political connections to get the extra zoning, to get the regulations changed, so then they can make the profit. So the property owner that paid taxes on that land all this time doesn't get a piece of the action. Well, instead, what we should have is that property owner should be able to put up smaller units, smaller numbers of units. If that property owner could swing a 25-unit project, they might be able to do it with their own resources, and they might be able to retire on the land and be able to have their retirement financed through managing that small apartment complex, and the tenants would get a better deal. Instead of dealing with a property management firm that hires somebody who really doesn't have their roots in the community, you would be, the tenant would have an owner, landlord, who, in my experience, are often a cross between a social worker and a contractor, and it's much more homey.
Sure.
You get a better
and that
product
person's
for the dollar.
on site 24 hours a day.
Well, that's right. And you have
Seeing
better
what's
supervision.
going on, who's coming in and out of the parking
That's right.
lots.
And the beauty of this is that hundreds and hundreds of small parcels can come onto the market faster than a few very, very large projects. Look at the large master plan developments that have been debated. Some of those have been on the books now for 10 and 12 years, and they're still not built.
Yeah.
Whereas the smaller property owner is more likely to be flexible
Certainly.
and react to changes in the market. We are destroying the quality of our neighborhoods through a slavish accommodation of unrealistic growth forecasts and through a growing monopolization of land development.
So, Bill, is that what's going on? Is that we have a governmental appetite that can only be satisfied with big gulps at a time?
Well, I think it gets back to the whole contribution system for political donations.
Sure.
I mean, it's the Port Blakeleys, et cetera, that are plugging the money into the system, and the small property owner doesn't have a chance to really compete in that ball game. We were kind of sold the 4-to-1 program, and I'd like to hear what Councilmember Dudowski's view is on it, a few years back by Gary Locke's administration as a way to save the rural areas. But you look at it, and it's the Grand Ridge development that can take advantage of that, probably got it in the first place, and not the small property owner.
Well, fundamentally, we need to change the political system as it relates to local governments. When people vote for their city council members, they get a brochure in the mail about them standing next to a park or coming across as a friend of the neighborhoods, and they are not. And what we need to be, we need to encourage groups like the League of Conservation Voters that go out and rate candidates based on their attitudes toward neighborhoods, because fundamentally, this problem is created at the ballot box, and it can be changed at the ballot box.
And people can get involved in the planning commissions. You know, those are appointed positions. They can show an interest. They can demonstrate.
But who appoints them?
Unfortunately, it's the city council who is elected by the developers that was in the bones connected to the thigh bone.
I think we can't leave this before we talk about the role of the media, too. Because if there's any pro-growth industry that ranks up there with the developers, it's the news broadcasters, the print media, with the exception, I guess, of East Side and Seattle Journal.
They're enamored by these huge projects.
Well,
you know, it's the grandness and the scale of these projects is attractive to them because they can sell newspapers by
and real estate.
talking about it.
It's growth, it's growth in their market. I mean, that's the higher the population of whatever their market area is, the greater the value of their corporation and future cash flow from profits.
Well, guys, this has been a fun discussion, and I hope we can do it again because there's an awful lot more involved in the growth issue.